Hello everybody, welcome back to the lecture on agroecology. Today on this chapter we will talk about the management of pest and disease in agroecology, so the management of pest and disease without using pesticides. So we will try to look at the different possible alternatives. So what can we do to control pests and disease without using chemical pesticide? So most of the mechanism you can use are prevention mechanisms. So they are things that you can do at all time before the pest arrives to limit the the impact of the pests and the disease. Are only few a measure you can take once the pest is already here without pesticide. So today we will firstly talk about biodiversity and how biodiversity helps us to control pests and disease. We will then talk about plant nutrition, hygiene, and seeds quality. Then on crop association, crop rotation, the use of mosquito nets, and then repellent treatment, so to say biopesticide that we can use once the pest is established. So first, biodiversity. So why does biodiversity help us to limit the attacks of pests and disease? First of all, we have what we call resource discontinuity. So this means that if you have different plants and different crops on your fields in comparison to just one crop, you will have the pest and the disease will have more difficulty to get from one host plant to one another because most of the pest and the disease only attack one of your crop unless you put similar crops on the same field, which is not advisable. But if you put crops from different family, you shouldn't have a disease or a pest that attack both. So they will attack, for example, onion, and because between the lines of onion you have carrots, the time and the facility it will have to get to the second line of onions will be more difficult, and for this reason it will take more time and the attack will be less severe. This is mostly because you have crops that are not suitable host for the pest. So the more crops you have, the more diverse field you have, then you will have a higher resource discontinuity, and then you can slow the attacks of pest and disease that way. And of course, if you have a high biodiversity on your field with different crops, you limit the risk of crop failure and catastrophic harvest, because even if you have a pest that comes and manage to kill all your onions, you will still harvest maybe the carrots and the cucumber, so you will still have something to harvest, to eat, and to sell. Another use of biodiversity that help us to control pests and disease is um, the control by beneficials. So when you have a high diversity of plants, if in your farm if you have a lot of different crops, but also different flowers and natural grasses and hedges and trees, like you can see maybe on the picture on the top, you will also have, because of this high diversity of plants, you will have a high diversity of animals, mainly of insects. So you can see on this picture on the right, on the top, you have a really diverse, biodiverse farm, and then you can find a lot of different insects and animals. In the middle, a bit less diverse farm, and then bit less animals, and then the third, a not so diverse farm, but still quite diverse for modern standard, and you only have a few animals and insects on it. And why would it be useful to have a diversity of insects? So if you have a diversity of insects, you will have predators among them. So this means insects or animals, can also be animals, that will hunt the pests for you. So you will have less, you will be able to control some of the attacks with the natural insects that you have on in your system. And then you also have parasitoids, which are insects that will lay their eggs inside the larvae of other insects, mostly of the pests, so you will also limit the expansion of pests that way. And of course, with the diverse um, uh, community of insects, you will have a lot of pollinators, so you will not have issues with pollinating your crops. So all of these three types of insects are called beneficial because they are insects that help us in one or the other way to in our farm. So, like I said, first we have the predators that are insects that hunt other smaller insects, and often they hunt the pests. So this is why you have here the example of the ladybug or a spider, which are both beneficial insects because they don't eat crops, even if you might sometimes think so because you will see some damage on your crop and you see the insects next to it. But usually he will be there because he is hunting the pest that is eating your crop. So these are example of beneficial predators. And then you have the third type of beneficial, which are the pollinators, which of course you know about. And sometimes pollinators can also be predators or parasitoids, so it's always useful to have them. So now we we look at some more specific examples of beneficials. So families of insects that are always beneficial and do not attack the plants. You have, for example, the Carabidae, which are large beetles of 15 to 20 millimeter. And you also have the Staphylinidae, which are really small, a few millimeter, and will hunt really small pests and nematodes. Then you have the ladybugs, which is a predator of aphids, whitefly, bugs, leafhoppers. All of the wasps are predators and can kill different pests, and the adult is often a pollinator as well. And then you have the spiders, which are not insects but are mostly hunting, either to their nest or actively hunting, but that do not attack the plants and kill the pests. You can also have some bigger animals that can be useful and kill some of your pests, for example, lizards and toads. But sometimes, because of the size, they can be damageful for your crops, or they can be dangerous for yourself. For example, snakes as well would not be a pest, but it's still not really good to have them in your field because it can be dangerous. So now, how can we use these beneficial species to control our pests in the system? So for this, there are three. First of all, we need to think about the law of Lotka-Wetko. I think you probably heard of it in ecology. So it is the principle: if you have two species, one is a predator of the other, then you will always have a stability. So when the prey population goes up, uh, there are more to eat for the predators, so they will also grow. And by growing, they will eat a lot of the prey, which will start to make the prey population go down again. And and then because the prey is going down, there's not much to eat for the predators, so they also start to die. And then they are just always a bit later in population size, but on that way, both population are regulated by the other, and you don't have anything, um, yeah, anything getting out of control. And like in a conventional agricultural system, you will get a prey, which is the pest, and you will have use pesticide, and you will have a low biodiversity on your field, so you won't have much of predators, and so the pest won't have a natural predator to kill it and eat it and regulate its population. So he will just grow and attack and destroy all your field until the time you kill it with the pesticide and prevent the destruction of your crop. But by using the insecticide, you will also probably kill the few predators that you could have, and on that way you cannot control at all your pest naturally, but you can control it just with the pesticide. And now, if we want to use beneficial species, there are three possible solutions to do this. So first of all, you can use what we call the flooded biological control. So this is basically like a pesticide by using a living organism. So you will add a lot of a predator or a parasite, for example, a virus or a bacteria or an insect that kill the pest you want to kill, and you will put a lot of it on your field, and it will kill the whole pest, and you will get rid of it. So it would be exactly like a pesticide, so it would not be sustainable. Just you use it one time, it kills the pest, but then the beneficial you introduce dies because there's no more prey for him. So it is not something sustainable, but it's something that you can use at one point to control a pest like a pesticide. And in opposite to pesticide, it will not damage health or environment because it is a natural um, a living organism that you introduce that will just die after this. And also the organism you will introduce is really specific, so it will only kill. For example, you bring a parasite of a certain insect, so it will kill this insect, but in opposition to a pesticide, it will not kill all the different insects that you have on your field. So this is the first solution of biological control using a beneficial species that you introduce in your field. A second solution is the conventional biological control. This is the idea of introducing a predator or a parasite to control the pest, uh, but you want him to stay in the system to have a sustainable control of the pest according to the law that of Locavoscara that you see here. So the predator will install itself in the system and it will control the prey population that you don't have a huge attack of pests, and he will not kill all the pests because you don't introduce a high amount of it, so the pest will survive and so the predator will also survive, and you could get a long time control of a pest. So this is the conventional biological control. These two type of controls need to have the product that you want. So for example, in Europe you can now find bioproducts for this kind of things quite easily for some of the pests. In a lot of African countries, it's difficult to find products that can, yeah, such products. So there is a third possible way, which is the conservative biological control. In this type of control, you will not introduce anything. You will just manipulate the environment to make it friendly for beneficial insects to come or beneficial organisms to come. So you will like install hedges, a high biodiversity in order to have a lot of insects, and by doing so you will have a lot of beneficial insects that will control the different pests. So you will not act specifically on a pest, you will really act preventively, generally on your system. So this is what I just explained. So the conservative biological control, you will promote the presence of natural beneficial by adapting the agroecosystem environment. So you will increase the biodiversity of crops and plants because, as I've said in the beginning, if you have a high diversity of plants, you also have a high diversity of insects, and when you have a high diversity of insects, you have more beneficial insects. You will build and provide refuges for natural beneficials, so that can be hedges, stone barriers, um, uh, wood on the moor, for example. So a lot of things can be used to have refuge where the where the beneficial can hide. And of course, you will prohibit or limit the use of pesticide, because if you use a pesticide, you will disrupt the whole system by killing all the beneficial as well as the pests. So specifically, what you can do to attract beneficial insect is to make crop association. By doing so, you will have a higher diversity of plants, and then you will have, because of this, a higher diversity of insects. You will also have a better soil cover, and this will give a refuge for beneficial insects. So a study by Yando in 1991 showed that the beneficial species, so predatory and parasitoid species, are more common in an associated plot than in a monoculture plot. And you have 50% less of pest in the polyculture than in the monoculture. What you can do to attract beneficial insect is to plant flower, either as a crop flower, maybe like hibiscus, for instance, or sunflower, or on the hedges or on the sides of the plots. That way you will attract a lot of insects, you will attract a lot of pollinators, which are sometimes also predators or parasitoids. You can plant hedges around your plots or around your farm. This will provide refuge for beneficial and increase the biodiversity on your farm. In addition to that, you can produce quality forage with the hedge. You can have an input of nitrogen if you plant leguminous tree, and you can limit the presence of animals that could enter your farm. It can also limit erosion and keep a humid microclimate on your farm. And you can plant fruit trees and these hedges that have some fruit. You can plant or dig stone barriers. So this is important in dry areas to limit erosion and keep humidity in the fields, but it's also a good refuge for beneficial that can be useful to control your pests. So under the stone barriers, some spiders, lizards can live and then go hunt in your crops for the pests, of course. Mulch is important to, it's really important to have the best soil cover possible in order for spiders, beetles, mites to live. Most of the insects that live in the soil are beneficial, either by hunting or by decomposing things in the soil. So it's really good to have a cover of the soil for control of pests. And as I said, not using pesticide is important, otherwise you will kill the, so not using generalistic pesticide that kill everything, especially because otherwise you will just kill the beneficial and disrupt your system. So that was for the biodiversity. A second aspect is that we will talk about is plant nutrition, hygiene, and quality seeds. So it is important to have a plant in good health, which receive the good amount of nutrients, otherwise it can be sick and its natural defenses will be lower, and it will have difficulty to fight the attacks of the pests or the disease. So it means giving enough nutrient that the plant is well fed and can defend itself, and also not give it too much, otherwise it will just grow too fast and not have not be ready for defenses. So this is important to improve the defense against attack. For this reason, it is important to have a fertile soil. It is also good to have the fertile soil because you will have then a lot of different organisms, beneficial organisms in the soil that can help you fight the pest. Some studies have shown that you have in a organic rich soil you will have a more beneficial insects and bacteria that kill and fight the soil-borne diseases. Hygiene is important always to inspect your crop, remove the disease plant, remove the rotten food underground to limit the spreading of the potential disease. And seeds, use resistant varieties to limit the the impact of the damage of pests and disease. So, for example, here on the left you have a cassava plant which is attacked by mosaic virus. So you should in no way use this plant to plant the next year, otherwise you will spread the virus. You can still harvest and eat the cassava, but it's important to monitor your field, and if you see you have a cassava mosaic virus on some of the plants, mark them in order to be sure not to use them on the next year. And on the right you have flies laying eggs in the tomatoes, and if you leave the rotten fruit like this, the fly will multiplicate and attack other tomatoes. So if you monitor your field and go a lot, you can take these rotten fruits away and be sure to limit the spreading of the pest. Then, of course, to limit to control pest disease, we can use crop association. Why is crop association good to limit pest and disease? First of all, because of the discontinuity of resources. So what we saw at the beginning, it will be slower and more difficult for pests to spread around the field if you have different crops on it. The second aspect that we already talked about is that we will have a higher diversity of plant of crops, so we will have a higher diversity of insects, and so we will have more beneficial and more predators. But with crop association, we can also plant crops that attract a particular beneficiary who will come and protect the crops. We can plant trap plants that will trap the pest and kill it. For example, Pennisetumon bracharia can be planted around cereal fields, and they will attract the armyworm and the stem borer, and which will load their eggs in the Pennisetum bracharia instead of in the maize, and then these plants will kill the eggs. So this is an example of an association that can be useful. We can use we can associate general repellent plants, so we have some plants that repel a lot of different insects, and so they can be associated with crops that are sensible to these attacks. For example, we can plant chili, ginger, onion, garlic, marigold, nasturtium. These are plants that repel a lot of insects and can be used to repel and protect some other crops. And then we can use crops that repel a specific pest. For example, we can associate onion to carrot. An onion will repel a specific pest of the carrot, and it goes both ways. Or we can associate desmodium, which is a legume with cereal, and desmodium will repel the armyworm and the stem borer. And last but not least, if you have crop association on one crop is destroyed by a pest, you can still harvest, eat, and sell the other one. Crop association also have other advantages which are not related to pest control. So you have a better soil cover, you have a better use of space because you can use a complementarity of plants morphology. A better use of soil resources, you can associate plants that use a specific nutrient with one that use another one. You have a diverse production. you can have a harvest at different times that can be interesting for income generation, and you have a higher yields than in monoculture. So to summarize with crop association, you have a complementarity of the associated species that make it more beneficial than a monoculture. So we will talk a lot more about crop association in the next chapters. So now we will talk about crop rotation, which is one of the most important pillar for to control pests and disease without pesticide. You should do this anyway, even if you don't have even if you use pesticide, you don't have an agroecology system, because it's really essential to limit the the attacks of pests and disease in general. So crop rotation is of course to have every year a different crop. So it is basically to have a biodiversity on time instead on space with the crop associations. So the basic logic is that a pest or a disease cannot infect the next crop because it is not a host plant. So if you alternate, if you make a good rotation with sufficient time between the crops of the same family, the eggs and the spores that you will have in the soil, when they hatch the next years, they won't find a host and they will just die. It's the same principle for weed, and it's also important to maintain soil fertility to have every year crops that use different nutrients that are more or less demanding for the soil. So as I've just said, it is important to allow sufficient time between two times when you plant the same crop in order to, otherwise you will have the eggs and the spores when they hatch that will be able to attack the crop that you planted. So this is why I show you this table, which show recommendation for biological agriculture of how long we should wait before planting the same crops or the same family again. So for grasses, for cereals, it is advised to always leave 1 year break between cereal crops independent of the species. So you should not plant cereal every year. You should always have 1 year out of two which have no cereals at all on your crop. And then you have the specific for the different crops. For example, rice, you should do it only once in 3 years, so you should have a break of two out of 3 years. Wheat is like cereal, you can do it every 2 years. Corn, also maize, on a 5 year rotation, you should do 3 years break, so you can do it only two times. So it's basically 1 out of 2 years, but a bit less, and so on. You can look at at the at the number. You have the same for legumes, so it is also not advised to plant legumes every year. And then depending on the crop, for example, pea is really sensitive to pest, so you should only do it 1 out of 7 years. And otherwise, for example, peanut, cowpea should only be done 1 out of 4 years with 3 years break. So of course these are recommendations, and when you plan your rotation, it's really difficult to follow all these rules. I think it is really essential to follow the rules about the family, so you should really not plant every year the same family. But sometimes it's difficult to really respect something, like if you produce pea, really to produce it once out of 7 years can be really difficult. You have the same for vegetable, but I just with the information just for the different families. So for example, um, Brassicacea, so cabbage family, you should make a break of 4 years in 7 years rotation. Solanaceae, you should make a break of 5 years in 7 years rotation, and so on. You can look at the table. I also given what are the main nutrients that they need, which is also important to take in consideration when you make your rotation to alternate the crops that need different nutrients and also that produce a different type of harvest. So yes, this is the theory, and then when you plan your rotation, it's difficult to really respect it. I really think it's important to respect the family break. Um, I think it's important to alternate crops with different needs, with more or less demonic crops. It's important to add a green manure to recover the soil in your rotation, and if possible, add biofumigation, like you can see on this rotation, mustard, which is able to, which is planned to kill the pest in your soil. So we will talk about it later. So this is an example of a rotation. Uh, so you have on 4 year, and you have 3 crops per year, so it's an irrigated rotation, which can for vegetable the whole year. And on this rotation, we try to alternate. So we only have 4 years, so we cannot respect uh, the whole breaks that are demanded for the different crops, but we can respect the family break. So you can see we don't have cereal every year, so only in year 1 and 3 with maize. We don't have cabbage every year, only in year 1 and 3. Carrot and onion we have only once. Then we have a 3 year break, so that's good to prevent pests. Then we have pepper and tomato that so with only one break between the two, so that's really a bit little, and that might cause a pest problem. But on a 4 year rotation, if you want to do both crop, it's difficult to do it otherwise. But we could make the rotation longer to put more time between them. And then we have a mucuna to as a green manure to recover the soil, and we have mustard to sanitize the soil and kill the possible soil-borne disease and pest that we might have. So will be one of the exercise you will have to do. So we will send a description, but you will have to plan a rotation according to the criteria that we will give. Firstly, without association, and then with association, by trying to respect the breaks that are on the tables, and also by trying to alternate demanding crops that need different nutrients, and so on. Okay, now we get to the next possible mechanism to control pests, which is the use of nets. So this is just the idea to protect the crops, to have the crops under a net where the pest will not be able to get in. So it can be used for delicate fruit that can produce a lot of money. It can be used for nurseries to protect the seedlings, but it should not provide shade, and it should not make a heat buildup that can be too much for the crops. It is often not sufficient alone, but if you add traps in it or add crop association with repellent plants, it can be really can work really well. A fixed greenhouse is of course good to have, but if you have only one or not much place, it will be difficult for you to do rotation, and you might have soil-borne disease problem. So for example, we can make cheap self-made greenhouse that can be moved and transported to grow, for example, tomato. So tomato is always in this sorry, tomato is always in these greenhouses, and we just move the greenhouses every year. That can be also done with small tunnels like that, and we can just move the tunnels every year to protect the same crop and still have a rotation. And then it can be used just to protect the nursery for seedling production, with 2 examples here. One for Burkina Faso, the other from Cameroon. And then to finish, if you have taken all these preventive measures that I've um, that I've mentioned, and you still see that pests are coming, you can use repellent treatments. So these are so-called biopesticide, but they're not really pesticides. They are really more repellents because they usually don't kill anything, but they will repel the pest out of your crop and protect it that way. This means that it's good because it won't kill the beneficial insects, but it will also not really get rid of the pest, but only uh, remove it for a few times. So you will have to apply it regularly, especially if it's raining. So these are a few examples you could make. Of course, you can also combine them. So you could have garlic maceration against aphids, mites, and flies, pepper maceration, so chili maceration, tomato maceration, papaya maceration, which can be used against fungal disease. And then you can also use neem, which work against a lot of pests. And if you make neem oil, it is really efficient. So it should be used carefully because then it is really like a pesticide, even if it's of a natural origin. So that was for today. We covered the basic about the control of pests and disease without using pesticide. We will go in details on crop association uh, on the next chapter, and then Quentin will really talk specifically about the different association on the next chapter. And we will send you an exercise about crop rotation that you will have to prepare for in 2 weeks time, and we will discuss it when I'm in Jima with you. So have a good day. Bye.